There are tons of well-known platformers, most of which you can probably remember from most indie titles and of course Nintendo. When most people tend to think of a platform game by Capcom, most people tend to think Ghosts and Goblins or Mega Man. However, there is another platformer people tend to forget about and, surprisingly enough, don't talk about anymore. I'm of course referring to Viewtiful Joe. This will be a 3-part video talking about the in-depth look of the Viewtiful Joe games. So where to start off in the beginning with the first title of the series, Viewtiful Joe. So let's Henshin-A-GO-GO, baby! Viewtiful Joe released on June 23rd of 2003. Even though the game is licensed by Capcom, most of the ideas came from a company known as Clover Studios. More specifically, Team Viewtiful, led by the game's creator, Hideki Kamiya. If you know who that guy is, I'm gonna save that to the very end, but let's just say he had a lot of crazy, over-the-top ideas. And one of his earliest ones was Viewtiful Joe. You'll probably see what I mean when I talk about the game itself. The game actually begins with Joe and Sylvia going on a date at a movie theater and seeing these old films of a hero known as Captain Blue. The movie ends with Captain Blue defeated, however the film comes to life and kidnaps Sylvia. However, with Captain Blue defeated, it's up to Joe to save the day, as his new hero form is created in Movieland, the place that this place takes place, known as Viewtiful Joe, and must take down the evil that is the Jeddo Empire, as they have an evil plan to use Sylvia to get to the human world and take it over. The reason I'm explaining this to you right now is because, well, in all honesty, they don't really go into much detail of it throughout the beginning of the game, but they do hint towards it throughout some small interactions with other characters. So let's begin with the first level of the game, Episode 1, Joe the Hero, which is definitely a tutorial world and is based off the classic Dracula films of the old 1960s. The tutorial itself is actually given to you by the spirit of Captain Blue and shows you what you're supposed to do in the game. Now, the best way I can describe Viewtiful Joe, it's a combination of a platformer mixed with a beat-em-up. Two different things that Capcom are actually well known for back in the 80s. With their tough-as-nails difficulty with games like Ghosts and Goblins and Mega Man, and the beat-em-up genre that Mike Hagger's from, which I don't remember. You don't really attack with the B button, you actually use the X and Y button to either punch or kick. But you can also angle them with the controls. A obviously is jumping, however you also learn some new techniques that involve something known as VFX energy, which allows Joe to use the power of film itself. By pressing the L button, you'll be allowed to slow time and allowed to do some really cool action sequences. This one is very useful. While pressing the R button will actually speed up your attacks in time. It's more useful for other situations, and I don't really use it that much for combat. And lastly, which you learn in Episode 2, Some Like It Red Hot, is the close-up attack, which gives your powers a boost of energy by giving you an up-close personal attack that allows for massive combos. However, Episode 1 doesn't give you the close-up attack, and you don't learn fast forward until later in the first level, so you're kinda used to only using the slow ability. However, my biggest problem with this tutorial is, well, I started off with the only two difficulties you can get with the game. Kids and adults, and I started with adults first, and... yeah, I totally suck at this. So I went to kids mode for the entire playthrough, because let's be honest, I am not good at these types of games. Though I will generally say there is a big problem with the game I have, and that is the fact that it does not teach you how to handle certain situations. It's basically a learning curve that a lot of old NES games had back in the day. At least give me a hint how to handle the big giant chopper, because seriously, I died like 10 times to this guy. And that was mostly in adult mode. At least with kids mode, I had a less of a hard time. Fun fact, since I played in adult mode, I was on the verge of rage quitting the game because I thought it was just borderline unfair. But it's just not good at handling certain situations on how to beat certain enemies. It wanted to definitely emphasize Mega Man, and it managed to succeed. After making it to the final act of the first level, as most levels are broken into different acts, you face your first real boss in the game, a vampire monster known as Charles III. He isn't as difficult as the helicopter in my honest opinion, but it is still a good first boss. Just don't ever do the helicopter ever again. Episode 2's theme is definitely more city-based, emphasizing not just one type of movie, but a multitude of them, such as getaway bus, just like that movie, I believe it's called Speed, and the boss, one of my favorite characters personality-wise, Hulk Davidson, is definitely an inspiration from biker films, or possibly The Warriors. After defeating Hulk Davidson, you enter Episode 3, 2 Million Leagues Under the Sea, which is a homage to 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, even though it's more inspired by Jaws movie. This is probably the worst chapter in the game if you want my honest opinion, because the water movements make Joe even slower, and when you have to do the slow ability, it makes Joe even slower, if that's a word. Probably not. I mean, there are not really that many good water levels. The water temple is a really good example of this, but I think this sucks because Joe's movements are pushed to a halt. I've seen turtles and snails and my old internet move faster than this. And plus, it's not helped with one of the most annoying bosses in the game, but not the worst boss in the game. I have nothing against Grand Bruce other than the fact that he has probably the worst mechanics in all the games, as he has a lock-on shooing ability that takes 2 hearts from you, and the fact if you leave him alone too long, he'll start healing himself. Whoever thought that was a good idea for a mechanic should buzz off. And the levels don't really get that much more enjoyable either. Episode 4 is probably a good example, the Viewtiful Escape. Definitely one of the most annoying ones, as you have to always dodge this giant missile, and I think you're supposed to use this platform to get around the situation, but in all honesty, I just damaged right through it, so I didn't want to bother with it. It took me 30 minutes to get through this level. Plus, it's also dealt with in Joe Imposter. He's not as annoying, but he does have an attack that takes out massive chunks of your health, and it's a good thing I'm playing kids mode, or else I would be getting game overs way too many times. Still, he's not that bad of a boss, but it takes a lot of trial and error, and also a crap ton of points in specific attacks you should get. Which I probably should mention before we continue on is that every time you do a specific level, or do a specific part of a mission and to navigate through each act, you're given a specific score to how you did well in the missions. I wasn't doing very well, as I usually got B's and A's, and sometimes lucked out on a V, especially in the beginning because I died so many times on the first level. I've gotten Viewtiful so many times. These points go into a currency, which you can actually go to a shop, so you can actually buy specific items, such as more 1-ups, more health, extra health pickups, and new abilities, like the Red Hot Kick. Or even one of my favorites, the extra power of VX energy, because trust me, that's very useful when you keep using the slow ability. I didn't get every power up, but there are also some special limited items such as the boomerang and also the pink bomb, but I didn't think these power ups through, and you know, I'm an idiot. And after defeating Imposter Joe, he actually turns into a new form, which is a black demon-like version of Joe, which becomes part of episode 5, the Midnight Thunderboy. Which is actually a pretty short level, but it's probably my favorite because it features the best character in Viewtiful Joe, which is Joe's newest rival, Alistair. Don't deny it, this guy's badass, and I don't mean it like an edgelord way. He actually has like a very hilarious personality. He even goes over what the Jeddo Empire is planning on doing with Sylvia by literally reading the script. That is actually really funny. And unlike the other bosses like Imposter Joe or Grand Bruce, Alistair has a really good fight if you know what you're doing. And considering how much I've gotten used to the controls, I think I got a good idea of how to handle Alistair. And I did, and after defeating him, he tells you that you had some very beautiful moves, which was the origin of Viewtiful Joe's name. And then Alistair disappears for the rest of the game. Even Alistair isn't happy about that. Oh well, there's still the sequel. Moving on to episode 6, the Magnificent 5, and yeah, this definitely emphasizes what makes it a Mega Man-like platformer. It's a f***ing boss rush. This time around, you're actually facing all the bosses of the Jeddo Empire again, well, excluding Alistair, but they do have more power in their attacks and more health. But considering how I knew how to handle most of these bosses, my real honest problem was I actually had a hard time with Hulk Davidson, yet everyone else I handled pretty easily. Even Grand Bruce and Imposter Joe. We find Sylvia, and he's being held by the leader of the Jeddo Empire, or sort of, Fire Leo, and he is the worst boss in the game. I've actually seen speedruns of the game, and even Fire Leo is annoying for the speedrunners or community. Because for starters, he has this fire-based body, and the only way to actually handle him, because they never tell you this, is you're supposed to be in speed mode and catch yourself on fire so you can hit him. There's a fire pit that always has platforms that disappear and reappear because they're sinking into the lava. And then he has a spinning move that's always annoying to dodge, and the only way for you to actually hit him is by dodging his attack so he can get stunned, so you can use his special combo attacks to start doing damage. It becomes a slog to sit through. Plus, if you don't know what you're doing, you are going to lose a life instantaneously like I did. Fire Leo was one of the most frustrating bosses I had to deal with in this game because it was just borderline annoying. There's just so much. However, after defeating Fire Leo, Sylvia gets captured again, and this time you're led to the true final episode of the game, Joe and Sylvia. It's definitely a gauntlet that definitely shows how to test your true skills, facing all the types of enemies and platforming skills that you've learned along the way, and then you finally get to face off against the main antagonist, which is Captain Blue? Captain Blue is the bad guy. Who didn't see that coming, except probably everyone? Though, joking aside, it actually is a good plot twist. And I will generally say the final boss fight is tough, but it's the right amount of tough that if you don't have the right moves to use, you can't really beat King Blue. Also, it's a mech fight on the planet Earth. And then after the mechs get defeated, you actually fight Captain Blue again, just like you did in episode 1. It's actually a really poetic homage to the beginning of the game. I think that's actually really clever. After defeating Captain Blue, he also reveals to be Sylvia's father? Well, you can't do a movie homage without a Star Wars reference. And it turns out Captain Blue was actually a famous director who starred in his own films. His movie sadly aged poorly, so he left for Movieland to relive his old movie days. However, Captain Blue warns that there will be 2 more threats attacking the Earth. And speak of the devil, threat number 2 is coming up. The game also ends with Sylvia also getting a V-Watch and becoming a beautiful warrior herself, hinting towards a sequel. And then after the credits roll, there's a very funny bonus ending that looks like a music video with the characters. You know, just like that one music video series that Rebel Taxi was talking about. All honesty, I thought that was really funny. However, since I played it on kids mode and I am playing the GameCube version, I don't really unlock anything. However, if this is the PlayStation 2 version, which came out much later, you actually get to play as Dante from Devil May Cry. And that is a really cool reward. But for the GameCube version, if you beat the game on adult mode, you'll unlock Sylvia and a new mode known as V-rated mode. And if you finish V-rated mode, you'll also be able to play as Alistair, and then unlock the most hardest difficulty in the game, Ultra V-rated mode. And after beating that mode, you'll unlock Captain Blue as a playable character, and nothing else. The game definitely emphasizes that you play the game entirely again to get more rewards, and after playing in Adults mode, not even being able to beat the first act of the first level, yeah, I'm not doing that again. However, it does give the game a lot of replayability, and I generally think that's a good thing. For people who are more experts in beat-em-up platformers, which I don't think is actually a thing. Viewtiful Joe is a good game, but there are issues with the game, such as not perfectly describing how to handle bosses or how to obtain background items. Yeah, I have no idea why there are items in the background, and I have no idea how to get them. But the gameplay and the replayability comes from how you can improve your combos and attacks, and to get those shining V ratings. You can play the game again in adult mode and the other harder difficulties, but if you've already played kids mode, you've already seen what you can do in this game. The game just adds a little more difficulty with the characters as well as the damage output, also draining your VFX energy to less than it should be, so you have to be very smart on how to use it. And with that, that was the first Viewtiful Joe game. Not the perfect game, but it's still not bad. It's definitely a game I think I would recommend to people who want 100% games and want to improve their skills in combo-based attacks. But that's all for now for Viewtiful Joe. See you on my channel again when we talk about its sequel, Viewtiful Joe 2. So until then, Henshin-A-GO-GO, baby!